Giants, warriors of unimaginable strength, a bloodline cursed from the days before the Great Flood. The story of Goliath and his brothers is far more than a legendary battle. It is the final chapter of an ancient war between the forces of darkness and the divine will of God. Who were the Nephilim? Were they merely mighty warriors, or did their origins stretch beyond the realm of men? The Bible speaks of them as giants, descendants of a mysterious race that once walked the earth, defying the natural order and spreading fear across nations. Though the flood sought to erase them, echoes of their bloodline remained, resurfacing in the form of Goliath and his brothers. But even the mightiest fall. Against all odds, it was not a warrior clad in armor who would strike down Goliath, but a shepherd boy armed with faith. David's victory was not just a triumph for Israel, it was the final blow against a bloodline that had long terrorized God's people. Yet there is more to this story than what many have heard. Was Goliath truly a towering 9 feet 9 inches tall, or has history altered the truth? Could remnants of the Nephilim still exist today, and what deeper meaning does this battle hold for us? In this video, we will uncover the true story of Goliath and his brothers, exploring their origins, the terrifying power they wielded, and how their reign of fear was brought to an end. Before we begin, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. And we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the Nephilim? Could their influence still be present today? Share your insights in the comments below. Now, let's step back in time and uncover the ancient battle between faith and fear, between light and darkness. The story of Goliath and his brothers is not merely an account of an ancient battle, but a revelation of a deeper, more enigmatic history that reaches back to the days before the Great Flood. The Nephilim, often described as giants or mighty men of renown, are first mentioned in Genesis, chapter 6, verse 1-4. These beings, born from the union of the sons of God and the daughters of men, were feared for their immense size, strength, and prowess. They were a race of warriors and conquerors whose existence threatened the balance of humanity. The identity of the sons of God has long been a subject of theological debate. Some scholars interpret them as fallen angels who took human wives, leading to the birth of hybrid offspring with superhuman attributes. Others propose that the phrase refers to the godly lineage of Seth intermingling with the descendants of Cain, leading to a corruption of humanity. Extra-biblical texts such as the Book of Enoch expand upon this narrative, detailing how a group of rebellious angels called the Watchers descended to earth and fathered the Nephilim, imparting forbidden knowledge to mankind and accelerating moral decay. The presence of the Nephilim contributed to the widespread violence and wickedness that ultimately led to the Great Flood, as described in Genesis chapter 6, verse 5-7. God's decision to cleanse the earth was, in part, a response to the corruption brought by these beings. Despite the flood's intent to erase them, remnants of the Nephilim bloodline persisted. The Bible later describes giants in Canaan, including the Anakim, Rephaim, Emim, and Amorites, suggesting that their lineage was not entirely destroyed. The Israelites encountered these formidable adversaries as they journeyed toward the Promised Land. In Numbers, chapter 13, verse 32-33, the Israelite spies sent to scout Canaan reported seeing men of gigantic stature, describing them as descendants of the Nephilim. Their fear was so great that they likened themselves to mere grasshoppers in comparison. Among the most infamous of these later giants were Goliath of Gath and his brothers, warriors of extraordinary size who terrorized the Israelites and fought under the banner of the Philistines. These warriors were not merely strong men, but towering figures whose presence on the battlefield instilled dread in their enemies. Some historical sources suggest that the Philistines may have intentionally recruited these giants for their military campaigns, recognizing their unparalleled combat prowess. Despite their imposing stature, the fate of the Nephilim and their descendants was ultimately sealed by divine intervention. David, an unassuming shepherd boy, stood against Goliath in what appeared to be an impossible confrontation. However, with faith in God and a single well-placed stone, he toppled the Philistine champion, proving that even the mightiest giants could not stand against the power of the Almighty. David's victory was not just a personal triumph, but a symbolic moment of divine justice, illustrating that faith and righteousness would always overcome corruption and brute strength. The Nephilim, whether seen as literal giants or as symbols of humanity's fallen state, remain one of the Bible's most fascinating and mysterious subjects. Their presence in Scripture serves as a warning of the dangers of hubris, unchecked power, and spiritual rebellion. Yet, their ultimate defeat at the hands of God's chosen warriors underscores the triumph of faith over fear, a theme that echoes throughout biblical history. Goliath was no ordinary soldier. He was a colossus of war, an unshakable force whose every step sent tremors through the battlefield. His armor gleamed under the sun, and his towering presence alone was enough to unnerve even the bravest warriors. Goliath's armor was not merely protective, it was an overwhelming display of power and intimidation. A massive bronze helmet, sculpted to reflect the visage of an unstoppable warrior, covered his head. His torso was encased in a coat of scale armor, composed of overlapping bronze plates that formed an impenetrable barrier against any weapon. This armor weighed a staggering 125 pounds. Making it not only a means of protection but also a testament to his prodigious strength. Few men could even lift such a weight, let alone wear it in combat. His lower body was protected by bronze greaves, which shielded his legs from any attempted strikes. These were not simply adornments but essential armor pieces that allowed him to wade into battle without fear of crippling injury. Each piece of his battle gear reinforced his near-invulnerable image, leaving no weak points visible to his enemies. Perhaps the most terrifying aspect of Goliath's arsenal was his weaponry. In his massive hands he wielded a spear unlike any other. The shaft was made of solid wood, as thick as a weaver's beam, and reinforced with bronze fittings. At the tip of this monstrous weapon rested a colossal iron spearhead, weighing approximately 15 pounds, an instrument of sheer destruction, capable of piercing through the heaviest armor with ease. In addition to his spear, he carried a javelin slung across his back, giving him the ability to strike from a distance before closing in for the kill. Each step Goliath took sent tremors through the battlefield, an ominous prelude to the chaos he was capable of unleashing. His deep, booming voice echoed across the valley as he issued his challenge, taunting the Israelites and daring them to send a warrior against him. His words were not only an act of defiance but a psychological weapon, designed to break the spirit of his enemies before a single blow was struck. To Israel, Goliath was more than an enemy. He was a walking nightmare, a warrior whose name alone was enough to fill men with dread. Yet, despite his formidable appearance, his downfall would come not at the hands of an equally armored warrior, but through the faith-driven courage of a young shepherd boy, proving that the might of giants is no match for the power of God. For 40 days, Goliath stood before the Israelite camp and hurled his challenge across the valley of Elah. His voice thundered, reverberating across the rocky expanse, each word dripping with mockery and contempt. The Philistine champion was no ordinary warrior. He relished in the psychological warfare of intimidation, knowing that fear alone could weaken his enemies before a battle even began. Goliath's challenge was simple, a duel to decide the fate of nations. He roared, "Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 8 to 9. Every morning and evening, he emerged from the Philistine ranks, clad in his imposing armor, issuing the same challenge. His taunts were not only meant to demoralize Israel's warriors, but to insult their God. He openly defied the armies of Israel, mocking them for their cowardice and daring them to produce a champion who could stand against him. But fear had gripped the Israelites. No man in Israel dared step forward. Even King Saul, the tallest among the Israelites and a warrior himself, remained silent, his courage faltering in the face of the giant's overwhelming presence. With each passing day, despair spread through the Israelite camp, gnawing away at their faith. It was not only their physical strength that was being tested, but their spiritual resolve. Would they trust in the power of their God, or would they surrender to fear? Goliath's challenge was more than combat. It was a direct challenge to the God of Israel. If no champion stepped forward, it would appear as though their God had abandoned them. For 40 days the Israelites trembled, their silence only strengthening the Philistines' confidence. This prolonged psychological assault was unlike anything Israel had faced before. Battles were often fought between armies, but here one man sought to dismantle an entire nation's will to fight. Every moment that passed with Goliath's challenge unanswered only emboldened the Philistines and weakened Israel's hope. Yet, amid the growing dread, a young shepherd from Bethlehem would soon step forward, unarmored, untrained in war, and seemingly insignificant. David's triumph would not come from steel or strategy, but from an unshakable trust in God, a victory already decided before the battle began. While Israel's warriors cowered in fear, an unlikely figure stepped forward, David, a young shepherd from Bethlehem. He was the youngest of 8 sons, overlooked by men but chosen by God. Unlike his brothers who bore the scars of war, David's battleground was the wilderness, where he defended his father's sheep from lions and bears. But what seemed like ordinary shepherd's work was actually divine preparation for a greater battle. David's life as a shepherd was one of solitude, responsibility, and peril. In the wilderness, he faced dangers that tested his courage and resilience. When lions and bears threatened his flock, he did not flee, he stood his ground, striking down the beasts with his staff and sling. These encounters were more than just acts of bravery, they were divine training, preparing him for a much greater confrontation. One day, David's father, Jesse, sent him on a simple errand to deliver food to his brothers on the battlefield and check on their well-being. But as David arrived in the valley of Elah, he heard the taunts of Goliath echoing across the encampment. Unlike the seasoned warriors of Israel, who cowered at the giant's words, David's heart burned with righteous indignation. How could this uncircumcised Philistine dare to defy the armies of the living God? David's response was not one of fear, but of faith. Where others saw an insurmountable obstacle, he saw an opportunity for God's power to be revealed. He boldly declared that he would face Goliath, a statement that drew ridicule from his own people. Even his eldest brother, Eliab, rebuked him, dismissing his words as arrogance. But David was undeterred. Brought before King Saul, David recounted his experiences as a shepherd, how he had fought off wild beasts with nothing but his hands and his sling. "The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine," he proclaimed. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 37. His confidence was not in himself, but in God's power to grant victory. Saul, seeing no alternative, agreed to let David fight. He offered the young shepherd his own armor, a king's protection, but David declined. The weight of the armor was unfamiliar, a burden that would only hinder him. Instead, he chose the tools he had mastered, a simple sling, a wooden staff, and 5 smooth stones from the brook. To the world, he seemed woefully unprepared, but in the eyes of God, he was perfectly equipped. As David stepped onto the battlefield, he did so not as a mere boy, but as a servant of the Almighty. His preparation had not come from the training fields of Israel's army, but from the quiet, unseen moments in the pasture, moments where he learned to trust in God alone. And now, as he faced the greatest foe of his life, his heart remained steadfast. Where others relied on weapons and armor, David relied on something greater, faith. And with that faith, he would walk into history, proving that it is not the strength of the warrior, but the power of God that determines the outcome of battle. The battlefield fell silent as David stepped forward, a stark contrast to the thunderous presence of Goliath. He sneered, his voice filled with disdain. "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 43. His laughter echoed across the valley as he mocked the audacity of Israel's so-called champion. But David remained undeterred. With unwavering conviction, he declared, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 45. These were not mere words, but a proclamation of divine power. As the battle commenced, David wasted no time. While Goliath lumbered forward, weighed down by his immense armor and weaponry, David moved with the swiftness of a shepherd accustomed to the wilderness. He reached into his pouch and retrieved a smooth stone, placing it into the leather sling that had been his trusted tool for protecting his flock. With practiced precision, he swung the sling and released the stone. The projectile sliced through the air with divine accuracy, striking Goliath squarely in the forehead. The impact was immediate. The great giant, who had instilled fear in Israel for 40 days, staggered, his massive frame swaying under the force of the blow. A moment later, he collapsed with a resounding thud. His mighty form sprawled upon the battlefield. The air grew still as both armies stared in stunned silence, unable to comprehend what had just occurred. The seemingly invincible warrior had been felled, not by sword or spear, but by the faith of a young shepherd and a single stone. But David did not stop there. Seizing Goliath's enormous sword, he approached the fallen giant and, with a swift motion, severed his head. Blood stained the ground as he lifted the gruesome trophy for all to see, a visible sign of Israel's triumph. The sight of their fallen champion struck terror into the hearts of the Philistine army. The men who had stood so confidently behind Goliath now turned and fled in sheer panic, their courage shattered. The Israelites, emboldened by this miraculous victory, surged forward in pursuit. They chased the retreating Philistines, striking them down along the road to Sharaim, all the way to the gates of Ekron and Gath. The battle that had begun with fear ended in resounding triumph, a victory not just for Israel, but for the glory of God. David carried Goliath's severed head to Jerusalem, a powerful symbol of God's deliverance. The once mocked shepherd boy was now the hero of Israel, proving that the power of faith could overcome even the mightiest foes. This victory would set the stage for David's rise as a future king, a man after God's own heart. Through this battle, God demonstrated that strength is not found in physical might or grand displays of power, but in unwavering trust in Him. The fall of Goliath was more than just a military victory. It was a testament to the reality that when God fights for His people, no force on earth can stand against them. But Goliath was not the only giant in the land. He had brothers, other warriors of extraordinary size, all part of the same formidable bloodline. Each of them met their end in battle, proving that no force, no matter how great, could stand against God's chosen people. One of the first recorded battles against Goliath's kin occurred when Ishbi-Benob, a warrior of immense size and power, sought revenge for Goliath's death. He wielded a spear of extraordinary weight, crafted to pierce through even the strongest armor. He targeted David himself, sensing an opportunity to strike down Israel's greatest warrior. But before he could land his fatal blow, Abishai, one of David's mighty men, intervened, slaying the giant and saving the king. 2 Samuel chapter 21 verse 16 to 17. This event marked the beginning of the end for Goliath's bloodline. Another of the Philistine giants, Saph, took up arms against Israel, seeking to reclaim the honor lost with Goliath's defeat. He was renowned for his brute strength and skill in combat, yet despite his fearsome reputation, he fell in battle against one of David's warriors. 2 Samuel chapter 21 verse 18. His death further demonstrated that the giant's dominance was waning and God's power reigned supreme. Lami, identified in biblical accounts as the brother of Goliath, was another fearsome warrior who sought to avenge his fallen kin. Armed with a spear as large as a weaver's beam, he was a formidable opponent. Yet he too met his demise at the hands of Elhanan, one of David's elite fighters. 1 Chronicles chapter 20 verse 5. This battle signified that even those directly related to Goliath could not escape their fated downfall. Perhaps the most unusual of Goliath's kin was a warrior described as having 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. This deformity, rather than being a mere oddity, was likely seen as a mark of supernatural origin, reinforcing the belief that these beings were not entirely human. However, even this anomaly was no match for God's warriors, as he was struck down by Jonathan, the son of Shimeah, and David's nephew. 2 Samuel chapter 21 verse 20 to 21. The reign of the Nephilim's descendants was coming to an end. One by one, the giants who once terrorized the land fell, their bloodline wiped from history. With each victory, the message was clear: God's judgment had fallen upon them, and David's warriors ensured that none would remain. This systematic elimination of Goliath's brothers and kin was not just an act of war, but a divine mandate, fulfilling God's promise to Israel that they would overcome even the mightiest of foes. Their deaths marked the end of an era, a time when giants roamed the land, standing as symbols of defiance against God. And just as David's faith had conquered Goliath, so too did the faith of his warriors eradicate the last remnants of these towering enemies. The giants had once cast a shadow of fear over Israel, but now their names were but echoes of a bygone age, their power undone by the will of the Almighty. Throughout biblical texts, giants are mentioned multiple times, reinforcing the significance of their presence in ancient times. The Rephaim, Anakim, and Emim are among the various tribes that carried the Nephilim legacy, as referenced in passages such as Deuteronomy chapter 2 verse 10 to 11 and Numbers chapter 13 verse 32 to 33. The existence of these giants was not merely a legend but a reality that shaped the history of ancient Israel, influencing its battles, territorial conquests, and theological reflections on divine justice. The book of Deuteronomy describes how the Israelites encountered giants in the lands they sought to inhabit, with the Rephaim being specifically noted as a race of great stature. The Anakim, another group of formidable giants, were feared even by seasoned warriors. When Moses sent spies into Canaan, they returned with reports of giants dwelling in the land, stating, "We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." Numbers chapter 13 verse 33. Their fear reflects not just the physical enormity of these beings, but the psychological dominance they exerted over their enemies. There are notable discrepancies in different biblical translations regarding the stature of these giants, particularly Goliath's height. The Masoretic text of the Hebrew Bible records Goliath's height as 6 cubits and a span, approximately 9 feet, 9 inches or 2 meters, and 97 centimeters. However, the Septuagint, an ancient Greek translation of the Old Testament, describes him as 4 cubits and a span, about 6 feet, 9 inches or 2 meters and 6 centimeters. These variations have led scholars to debate whether textual alterations occurred over time, or whether different traditions recorded distinct measurements. Ancient manuscripts such as the Dead Sea Scrolls provide additional variations, further deepening the mystery surrounding the true height of these biblical giants. Some scholars argue that later scribes may have exaggerated their stature to emphasize their imposing presence, while others contend that these discrepancies reflect genuine differences in regional accounts and oral traditions. Beyond the Bible, extra-biblical texts, such as the Book of Enoch and the Book of Giants, elaborate on the origins and deeds of the Nephilim. These writings describe how the fallen angels who fathered the Nephilim also taught humanity forbidden knowledge, including warfare, sorcery, and astrology, concepts that became entwined with the downfall of early civilizations. While these texts are not considered canonical in most Jewish and Christian traditions, they provide valuable insights into how ancient cultures perceived the Nephilim and their influence on the world. The presence of giants in biblical history serves as a powerful metaphor for the struggle between divine authority and human defiance. They represent obstacles that only faith in God can overcome, reinforcing the biblical theme that spiritual strength surpasses physical might. The ultimate defeat of the Nephilim and their descendants by the Israelites signifies the fulfillment of God's promise to deliver his people from oppression and establish them in the promised land. As biblical scholarship continues to uncover new insights, the accounts of giants in Scripture remain a fascinating topic, bridging the realms of history, theology, and mythology. Whether viewed as literal beings or symbolic figures of opposition against God's will, their role in the biblical narrative highlights the enduring power of faith in the face of overwhelming adversity. One of the most perplexing mysteries in biblical history is how giants persisted after the flood. If the purpose of the deluge was to cleanse the world of wickedness, including the corruption introduced by the Nephilim, how then did their descendants appear again in later biblical accounts? Various theories have been proposed to explain this phenomenon. One perspective suggests that the Nephilim's spirit survived beyond the flood, influencing later generations through supernatural means. In this view, the fallen angels who fathered the Nephilim continued their influence upon humanity, either by directly reintroducing their offspring or by possessing human rulers and warriors to carry on their rebellious legacy. Another theory suggests that the lineage of the Nephilim was preserved through Noah's family, specifically through Ham's descendants. Ham's son, Canaan, became the patriarch of a people known for their association with giants. The Canaanite tribes, including the Anakim and Rephaim, were described as being of great stature, lending credence to the idea that the Nephilim bloodline found a way to survive through human heredity. The Book of Enoch and the Book of Giants, ancient texts that expand upon the Nephilim narrative, provide additional insights. According to these writings, the Nephilim were not only physical beings but also spiritual entities whose wickedness transcended their mortal forms. These texts describe how the spirits of the Nephilim became disembodied after death, wandering the earth as malevolent spirits seeking to corrupt mankind. This interpretation aligns with certain biblical passages that associate demonic activity with the fallen angels and their offspring. Archaeological and historical evidence also points to the continued presence of giants in post-flood civilizations. Megalithic structures found across the world, from the massive stone circles of the Middle East to the ruins of ancient American civilizations, hint at the possibility that a race of beings with extraordinary strength once roamed the earth. Some researchers speculate that these architectural feats were achieved with the aid of beings who possess knowledge and abilities beyond those of ordinary humans. In biblical accounts, the Philistines and other Canaanite tribes seem to have had an unusual concentration of giants within their ranks. The persistence of these beings suggests that they either continued to be born into specific bloodlines or were somehow recreated through spiritual means. This has led some scholars to propose that the Nephilim may have been hybrids, not merely in terms of ancestry but also in their nature, existing between the physical and supernatural realms. Regardless of how the giants persisted after the flood, their role in biblical history remained consistent. They stood as adversaries of God's chosen people, embodying defiance and the corruption that had plagued humanity before the flood. Their defeat at the hands of the Israelites symbolized the triumph of faith over fear, divine justice over chaos. The question of their ultimate fate remains open-ended. Were they completely eradicated, or do traces of their bloodline persist in unrecorded history? Do the spiritual remnants of the Nephilim still seek to exert their influence in the modern world? These questions continue to inspire theological inquiry and scholarly debate, ensuring that the legend of the Nephilim endures as one of the most mysterious and compelling elements of biblical lore. The presence of giants in biblical history is not confined solely to the Israelite scriptures. Various ancient texts, such as the Book of Enoch and the Book of Giants, expand upon the existence and influence of these beings. In many ancient cultures, stories of powerful giants are common, hinting at a widespread awareness of their presence in antiquity. From Mesopotamian mythology to Norse legends and Native American oral traditions, the concept of giant-like beings permeates human history. This suggests a deep-seated recognition of their existence, or at least their symbolic significance. The Sumerians, one of the earliest known civilizations, recorded myths of the Anunnaki, celestial beings who descended from the heavens and possessed great power. Some interpretations suggest that these beings share striking similarities with the biblical Nephilim. Similarly, in Greek mythology, the Titans were depicted as colossal beings who ruled before the Olympian gods, much like how the Nephilim were said to have dominated early human history before the flood. Ancient Egyptian records also contain references to towering warriors, and certain hieroglyphic depictions show figures of extraordinary size standing beside human rulers. Some historians propose that these could represent either literal beings or metaphorical symbols of power. The biblical accounts of the Rephaim, Emim, and Anakim closely parallel these stories, indicating that the Israelites were not the only civilization to recall encounters with beings of unusual stature. The continuation of giant lineages after the flood is another mystery that transcends religious texts. Some scholars theorize that their persistent presence in various ancient cultures could be due to isolated bloodlines that maintained the genetic traits of pre-flood Nephilim. Others suggest that divine judgment continued beyond Noah's time, as evidenced by the Israelites' repeated battles against the Anakim and Rephaim when settling Canaan. In a more practical sense, the Philistines' military strength, bolstered by figures like Goliath and his kin, demonstrates how these mighty warriors influenced history beyond biblical accounts. Ancient warfare often relied on psychological intimidation, and the presence of towering soldiers would have instilled great fear in their opponents. The Philistines may have deliberately sought out such warriors to reinforce their dominance, much like how medieval rulers employed elite knights and warlords of formidable reputation. Modern discoveries of megalithic structures, such as the ancient ruins of Baalbek in Lebanon, Stonehenge in England, and the pyramids of Egypt, have fueled speculation that a race of giant beings may have once existed to build these monumental works. While mainstream archaeology attributes these structures to early human civilizations, some researchers argue that the biblical giants, or their descendants, could have played a role in their construction, wielding knowledge and strength far beyond that of ordinary humans. Ultimately, the presence of giants in historical and mythological narratives raises compelling questions about the interplay between history, religion, and human imagination. Whether seen as literal beings or as metaphors for chaos and divine punishment, their stories persist across cultures and epochs, ensuring that the legend of the giants endures as one of the most captivating mysteries of antiquity. The story of David and Goliath is more than just a tale of an underdog's victory. It is a testament to the power of faith. Challenges that seem impossible are no match for those who walk with God. When fear tells you to back down, faith tells you to step forward. The narrative is a reminder that those who rely on worldly power, arrogance, and brute force will ultimately be undone, while those who place their trust in divine guidance will triumph. David's victory over Goliath serves as a profound allegory for the human struggle against overwhelming odds. It reinforces the biblical theme that God chooses the weak to confound the strong, the humble to overthrow the mighty. Just as God empowered David, he empowers his people to confront and overcome the giants of sin, fear, doubt, and oppression that seek to dominate their lives. The Nephilim, once a force of terror, met their end through divine justice, demonstrating that no power on earth can stand against the Almighty. Their destruction at the hands of David and his warriors reflects the broader biblical theme of God's sovereignty over all creation. Time and again, Scripture teaches that victory is not achieved through human effort alone, but through faith in the Lord's divine plan. This battle wasn't just about Israel. It was about every struggle between light and darkness, a foreshadowing of how faith would always triumph over oppression. In the New Testament, Jesus Christ, often referred to as the Son of David, embodies this same principle. Through his life, death, and resurrection, he conquered the ultimate giant, sin and death, offering salvation to all who believe in him. The battle between David and Goliath, therefore, is not merely a historical account but a spiritual paradigm. It reminds believers that they are never alone in their struggles, for God fights on their behalf. It encourages faith in the unseen, trust in divine power, and confidence that even the most insurmountable obstacles can be overcome with God's guidance. Furthermore, the story carries a moral lesson about humility and obedience. David did not win because of his personal strength or skill. He won because he understood that the battle belonged to the Lord. His unwavering confidence in God's power contrasts sharply with Goliath's arrogant reliance on physical might. This lesson continues to resonate today, teaching that true victory comes through reliance on God rather than human capabilities. The giants have fallen, but the lesson endures. With God, all things are possible. The story of David and Goliath continues to inspire believers to stand firm in their faith, confront their challenges with courage, and trust that God's plan will always lead to victory. Just as David stepped forward with nothing but faith and a sling, so too are believers called to face their battles with the assurance that God is on their side, and with him no enemy, physical or spiritual, can stand. The battle against Goliath was not just a physical encounter, it was a spiritual confrontation between faith and fear, between trust in God and reliance on worldly power. David's triumph was not merely his own, but a victory for all who believe that with God, no enemy, no matter how formidable, can stand. Though Goliath fell, his brothers sought to continue his legacy of terror. Yet one by one, they were defeated, proof that no power, spiritual or physical, can stand against faith. The Nephilim story may be shrouded in mystery, but one truth is clear: faith remains the greatest weapon of all. So whatever giants you may face in your own life, remember this: victory belongs to those who stand firm in faith. If you found this journey through biblical history fascinating, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more content like this. Let us know in the comments what you think about the Nephilim. Do you believe their bloodline still exists today? And don't forget to share this with others who may find it just as thought-provoking. Thank you for watching, and may your faith be as unwavering as David's. Until next time, stay blessed.